Barbara, not Barbara. Barbara's
mother,
yeah.
Anyway, she said, I remember, and I told her you was coming.
That's the love of my life right there, buddy. Sonia was. And she's married to Brian Fain, I think. Unless they're not married
I think
anymore.
they're not married no more.
Is that right?
I think, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, they may be.
Well, he and I were we went in the Marine Corps together.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, isn't it funny how things changed? Now, going back to us camping, we camped what, all the time?
Probably not every weekend, but certainly a lot of weekends. We were
remember,
there a lot.
You remember when we spent the night in your barn?
No.
You don't remember that?
I do not remember that.
Me and you and Tim Gobble and Tony Gobble and Jeff Howard and Derek stayed the night in y'all's barn.
I do not remember.
You don't remember that at all?
I do not.
Boy, that's weird. But you remember camping.
Oh, listen, there was a huge rock, and we used to have a fire behind that rock. Well, one night that fire was so hot that we split that rock right down the middle. I mean, yeah, there are things that I certainly remember, but there are things.
Do you remember when we set fire to the 40 acres?
Yes. How could I forget that? I've set some fires as a child. Yeah. We were chasing a squirrel one time over by our house, and Derek and I could not get it out of the tree. We had shot up into a hollow tree, and so we lit the inside of that tree on fire, and we burned like 25 acres of land.
But that one night when we was camping on Frontage Road, we literally burnt 40 acres. Yeah. I don't remember who didn't put the fire out. Do you? Or maybe we thought we had it out.
There's no telling. But those were those prime teenage years when you go up and we had everybody out there, and it was just boys having fun, man. You could see the whole. I mean, at that time, Cleveland was so much smaller than it is now, but you could see just forever. And now all those houses up there where we used to camp.
My dad was driving me up there one night because I was probably not even driving age, and we were going down Mouse Creek Road, and I could see the fire that y'all had already started on Frontage Road.
Okay. Yeah.
Those were some good times,
Oh.
And they weren't really planned. I don't even remember. We just ended up there so much.
But they were wholesome times. We weren't drinking. We
Nobody.
weren't, we were
I don't think anybody was drinking.
No, we weren't. We were just enjoying boys, doing teenage boy things.
Do you remember when we, my memory I think is better than yours.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Do you remember when we pulled the snake across North Lee Highway with the string?
I do remember that lots of times, yeah. People would either swerve to try to miss it or they would try to hit it. Yes, I do remember that.
Was it a real snake or was it was a rubber snake?
It was a rubber
and we'd put a string on it.
Yeah. One person would have to get up and run across the road, set it up, and then when a car would come, we'd start pulling that thing slowly across the road, and they would try to speed up to hit it or slow down, swerve. Some people would try to stop. Yeah.
What was the point of that? I don't even remember why we was doing it. Just something to do, I guess.
Something to do.
Now, we used to hang around some Sheffies that lived on Sheffey Lane.
Alan and his brother Charles.
What happened to them?
So Alan still lives in Etowah, and he works at Bird's Electric. He's been there a long time. And his brother Charlie lives in Atlanta. And then there's another one named Greg. He was a little bit older than Charlie and Alan. And he lives on that land. As a matter of fact, Alan sold that land to the East Cleveland Church of Christ.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
North Cleveland.
North Cleveland.
North Cleveland
Yeah. Church of Christ.
I didn't realize that, but I'm seeing the correlation now.
Yep.
Now you said your dad had the bypass. Is that right?
He's had 4 stents put in the last less than 6 months. Yep. So he's healing from that. I remind him often that if we were in the 70s, he would still be in the hospital, but nowadays, they'll put a stent in and let you go home the next day, but they're expecting that you're going to take the time to heal, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. But,
Is he doing okay?
he's doing okay. He needs to rest.
Is he at home?
Yep, he's at home. I just left there on my way down here.
Was he on, he still live at the same place?
Yeah, yeah.
Moon Pelley, where did he get that name?
Well, the way it's told to me is it had something to do with when maybe he was living in Calhoun or something before he's not, he is a naturalized citizen. He is Canadian.
Canadian, yeah.
And I don't know. I know he's had that name as long as...
As long as I know. What is his real name?
Derek Maxwell Pelley.
Max Pelley, yeah.
And of course, Derek, my brother's Derek Maxwell Pelley Jr. So
what's
Daddy's
Derek
a senior.
doing now?
He was working at Bowaters, and of course Bowaters has shut down everything, and now he works for another company. I don't know the name of it.
There, I guess.
It's up there in Charleston
Yeah.
somewhere. I think quite a few people from Bowater went over there.
Your dad was a great guy, or is a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been a minister, song leader.
Elder.
Elder. He was doing a Bible study as the leader of a Bible study that Eastside was doing on Tuesdays. Now, I know he still goes. I don't know if he's still the Bible study conductor or not, but yeah. And my mom, she's still right there with him, and they've been married 60 years.
I remember him my whole life. He played the spoons.
She did. He did play the spoons. He probably still would if you ask him to.
I never could figure out how they did that or why they did that, but he knew how to play them. It wasn't just, he knew how to play them, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's good to see you. I hadn't seen you in how long?
It's been a long time. I don't know how long.
15 years?
Maybe longer.
You hadn't changed one bit.
Oh, yes, I have. I was talking to my mom today. You remember I used to have wiry, big head of hair.
I remember that. You remember when we went to Lipscomb for the
a conference or
for
something.
the conference? Remember that weekend?
Yeah.
Jeff died.
Yes.
Boy, that
Jeff
was,
Howard, right?
Jeff Howard,
Yeah.
yeah. Y'all were
Yeah.
good friends.
We were good friends. I'll tell you what, man, there's only so much trouble teenage boys can get in, but when he was driving his car, it was an older car, it was like an old Buick something. I remember one time he and me and Derek were in his car, and we drove out onto somebody's farmland that apparently they didn't want anybody driving on. And he turned his car around like in a donut kind of thing, and they came after us, chasing us. And I'll bet we went, I don't know, 15, 20 miles trying to get away from these other farm boys for just turning around and blowing up dust in your driveway.
And what would have been worse if they'd have caught up with Jeff? Because he'd have killed him.
He was a big boy, wasn't he?
He was a big guy.
He did not play. He was a big boy. He was a great guy. I can't believe he's gone.
I really hate that.
Yeah.
I saw him at Katie's Kitchen several years back because his wife ran it, I think.
Right. Yep.
And I didn't speak to him, and I regret that to this day.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure maybe if he would remember me. Do you ever get like that? You're not sure if people will remember you?
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what, Dee? There's something about being from Bradley County. Where I live now in Lexington, South Carolina, if I see a car on the road in Lexington from Bradley County and they pull over, I'm going to go talk to them.
Sure.
I want to know if they know who I know from Bradley County, right?
Does that happen much?
People from Bradley County, and actually, I met a guy not too long ago from Bradley County who actually worked for the Cherokee Forest Service right over there by, you know where I'm talking about, on Ocoee Road over there.
Yeah, just right down here.
Yep, and now he's over there in South Carolina. But he said when he retires from the Forest Service, he's moving back to Bradley County because he liked the whitewater rafting up there on Ocoee. So occasionally I was the farthest away that I've ever been was I saw a girl that I went to high school with in Charleston in Arizona.
Golly, what are the odds? What are the odds of that?
I think it just has to do with being friendly from a friendly place.
That is really weird.
Yeah.
What were you doing in Arizona at the time that you saw her?
I was traveling, so I was stationed in California. I was stationed in 29 Palms, California. And there, occasionally, I was a drill instructor at Parris Island, so we drove from 29 Palms, California to Beaufort, South Carolina. That was a long ride. And along the way, we took turns rotating drivers, and I just so happened we pulled into a service station, and there was a car from Bradley County, and the two guys that were with me they're not local yokels like, we're friendly people. And so I got out of the car, and they're like, where you going? I'm like, that car's from Bradley County, Tennessee. And they're like, so? I said, I might know them. And I went over there, and it was a girl I went to high school with.
What are the odds of that?
I don't know, but from that day forward, one of those guys nicknamed me Opie. He said, you are just like Opie Taylor.
How did you end up going to the military? I don't remember when you... I don't remember. You know, there's a period between when you're right out of high school and to where you're 26. It's just kind of a blur.
Yep.
You really don't know what happened or where people go. I guess everybody's kind of scrambling.
Trying to find out what they're going to do next in life. Well, I never wanted to be in the military. I never had a desire to be in the Marines. I never had a desire to, when the recruiter would come into Charleston High School, I would go the other way. I had no desire to be in the military, right? I was going to grow up, live here, marry here, have my kids here, and be here for the rest of my life. But what happened was, in high school, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. So I decided to go to welding school. So my senior year, I took up welding, and Athens has a technical school for welding.
That's where Jeff Whaley went, right?
That's where Jeff Whaley went, but I was going there with Brian Fain. Brian Fain and I had known each other, of course, from Central. He would come with his mom from time to time, so we were friends. And so we were up at, I had graduated from high school. I worked a summer at Bowaters, and the only reason that Bowaters let me work that summer was they knew I was going to do an internship in welding. And I had a chance to go back to Bowater and work after welding school, right? So here I am, I'm in the booth, I'm at welding school in Athens, and it's hotter than, it's hot, right? You're wearing leathers and, you get slag all over you. And so Brian came out of his booth one day and he says, man, I'm not doing this anymore. I was like, well, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to go talk to the Marine recruiter. I was like, Marines, man, that's kind of extreme, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, but he goes, I'm going to go talk to him. Why don't you go with me? And that night I came home, and when I walked in the door at my mom and dad's house, I said, you're never going to believe what I did today. And they said, what? I said, I joined the Marines. And they were like, my mom said, you march right back down there and you tell that Marine recruiter that you are not going in the Marines. And I said, I can't do that. I'm going in the Marines. And so it was a little tumultuous time there at the Pelley house because they really did not want me to be in the military.
How old were you then?
I was 18. I think my mom was very concerned that I would, get killed. I mean, the Marines, really are. I mean, it's the first to fight. So she was very concerned, and I don't really think I knew what I was getting into.
But you were always a tough guy.
Nah, I don't think so.
I believe you were. but you weren't like in athletics.
No.
You were just a...
Well,
it's kind of a trench fighter type guy.
I don't know about tough guy, but I will tell you this. My dad worked our butts off. I do believe in a work ethic, right? My dad taught me that work ethic, and I have it to this day. So I do believe in that. Now,
you hauled a lot of hay, I believe.
I used to work with Randy. We'd go out and do summer hay, and Jeff Harris. And, we would do some of that. I went in the Marines, but I don't think I really knew what I was getting into, because when I got to Parris Island, if you don't really want to be in the Marine Corps, that's the place where you'll find out real quick. Those drill instructors are on you, and they're eating you alive, man. And they're treating you like you're nothing. And really the bottom line is, if you're going to break, they would rather you break there than break in the trench.
Now, was this when Parris Island was when you went to boot camp?
Yeah.
Are you there thinking like 2 days in, what in the hell have I done?
The first day, D. The first day when drill instructors, they just come and they descend. They descend. It's like you have a piece of meat around your neck. They just descend. They start yelling, screaming at you. And you're just absolutely blown away
Scares
by what's
me.
going on, right? By what's going on. And, I mean, that first night I cried myself to sleep. And then
Literally?
Yeah. And I wrote my mom letters all the time saying, this is the worst thing I've ever had happen to me in my life. It's the scariest thing. I can't believe I'm doing this, right? But then the day you graduate, I mean, as time goes on, they take what is an individual and they turn them into a team player who doesn't believe in yourself first. You're looking out for that other person. And I do want to talk about that today because that's why we have so many problems with veterans trying to reintegrate into civilian society, right? In the military, we are trained that there is always going to be somebody who's got your back. Always, right? And so, as time goes on and now you're starting to get built back up again, man, I was in the best shape of my life. In 1983, coming out of Paris Island, boy, get in front of me and I will tear you into pieces. I mean, that's that mentality that you have. And I loved it. I did. But I will tell you this. After being raised here, I missed home. And after 4 years in the Marine Corps, I absolutely said, you know what? I got to get out. I got to go back home. I need to be, where my people are. So I got out of the Marines.
I remember that. You came back. Remember, we was at Central.
Yep.
And you were at the water fountain.
Yep.
And I said, how's it going? And you said, it's going good. But I think I'm going back. Remember that? You don't remember that, I'm sure, right?
I don't remember that, but I will tell you this, Dee. I came back here, and the day I went out looking for my first job, I put on a tie, and I put on my Marine Corps tie clasp. And I went down to Hardwick Stove and I applied for a position. And it just so happened that there was a guy standing in the front from Human Resources. And he walks over to me and he goes, I like that Marine Corps tie clasp. Were you in the Marine Corps? I said, yes, sir, I was. He said, hire him right now. Just like that, I got a job at Hardwick. And so I started working there. Come to find out, he was a West Point grad. So he had done a military stint in the Army, and he had, he knew the value of having a military person there, right? But what happened was I was working third shift, welding. Right back to welding, right? I was doing TIG. I was doing electric spot welding. We were putting ovens together. And I liked third shift. It wasn't bad. But what I heard was I worked with a lot of people there that had been working at Hardwick all their lives. And many of them were Vietnam veterans. Some of them had served in the military. And they all said to a man, oh, I wish, I was back in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. You take your pick of whichever one it was. If I'd have just stayed in, I'd be retired. I mean, I heard it from everybody. And here I was, a young guy with 4 years under my belt of being in the military. And I was like, holy cow, man.
Still young.
I made a mistake. Now, granted, being back here was good. I was with Mother and Daddy. I had friends. My family was here. My sisters were still young. And so, that was good. But you don't have anybody that has your back. It's just the bottom line. There's a brotherhood and a sisterhood that you have in the military that cannot be paralleled out here unless you're a policeman, a firefighter, or your SWAT team. You're doing something that has a brotherhood system to it, right? And that's why so many people getting out of the military have a hard time, because it's a struggle to find who's going to have your back. And so, yes, I probably did tell you that at the water fountain. But guess what? I went back down to the recruiter's office and said, hey, I made a mistake. I want to go back in. And the recruiter said, I'm sorry. We ain't taking anybody. I said, what? He was like, we're not taking anybody. So I walked out of his door. I walked over to the Air Force recruiter's office, and I walked in. Now, you remember me when I came back. I had a hind tight. I had, real short haircut. Mm-hmm. So I went into the Air Force recruiter's office. He said, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm interested in the Air Force. And he looked at me, and he goes, were you in the Marine Corps? I said, yes, I was. And he said, I don't think you're going to do well in the Air Force. I said, why not? And he said, let me throw this scenario at you. He said, you're out tomorrow and y'all are picking up trash. And he goes, you're walking with one of your airmen and he's picking up trash. and you notice that one of your airmen is leaving trash and not picking up trash. He's just walking along and he's not picking up trash. And you're going to say to him, hey, bud, you need to start picking up trash. And he's going to say to you, why don't you pick it up? He said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm probably going to pull him aside and say either you pick up that trash or I'm going to kick your ass. And he said, well, that's why we don't want you in the Air Force. He said, in the Air Force, we want to find out why the guy is not picking up trash and we want to try to fix it. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, you know what? Forget it. I don't want to be in the Air Force. So I walked out of his office and then I went and joined the Knoxville Reserve. I was a combat engineer out of a Knoxville Reserve unit for 2 years. And I was waiting, man, just waiting. In 1989, I got a call from the local recruiter. He said, I'm taking 50. I'm taking 50. And he said, you're number 1 on the list. Do you want to go? Well, I had at that time applied for a job at Y-12 in Knoxville working at the Oak Ridge nuclear plant. And those guys make real good money. And I was probably 6 months into an 8-month vetting process where you do background checks. I mean, they go back to your grandparents. And the recruiter said, what do you want to do? Do you want to go or not? I said, can you give me 24 hours? He said, I'm going to give you 24 hours, but in 24 hours, I'm giving your slot to somebody else. So I called Oak Ridge and said, hey, I know we're in this vetting process and, you know, we've got a couple of more interviews to go. Is there any way you can guarantee me that I'm going to have a job at Oak Ridge? And he said, no. And I said, okay, remove my name off the list. And he said, what? I said, remove my name off the list. He was like, we've spent thousands of dollars on this. I said, I don't care. If you can either guarantee me a job, you can leave my name on that list. But if you can't guarantee me a job, I'm going back in the Marine Corps. And he said, I can't guarantee you a job. I said, okay, take my name off the list. And I went back in the Marines, 1989.
And hadn't looked, were you tickled to death?
I never looked back. Well, I wasn't tickled to death because when I got out of the Marines after 4 years, I really realized some things, right? Brian Fain went in and he went in a motor T. So he was a driver in motor T. He learned how to drive some big vehicles and stuff like that. I went in the infantry. I could, you know, shoot and I could scoot and I could do all of those things. I mean, I could set up an ambush or, you know, a perimeter or whatever. But when you come back out here, those job skills, what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah, you can't get a job fighting.
Well, unless you go to the police department,
yeah.
Right? So, you know, so I said, you know, if I go back in, I told the recruiter, I said, if I go back in, I want to do something different. And when he came to me and said, I have a slot for you and you got 24 hours, I said, what's the job? He said, the same one you were in before.
That was a rough 24 hours thinking, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my parents didn't want me to go. They were begging me to stay. At that time, I was married and I had a little girl. My wife didn't want me to go. I mean, it was really a tough, but the ultimate decision was I really only had to think about all those guys at Hardwick Stove that say to me, man, I wish I'd have been. Yeah, I mean, that military retirement to this day, Dee, as we go down and we look back over that time in the military, man, it has saved my bacon 15 times over. I mean, that military retirement has given me a master's degree in college. I mean, a bachelor's degree. I had a son who was special needs. It paid for all of his medical care. I wouldn't have had any of those things if I
get up every morning and take a picture of the sunrise.
No, exactly, man. I've got a lot to be thankful for. I've got a lot to be thankful for. And those next years, I tell you what, Dee, the very next thing I did, of course, I went back in 89, right? I checked into my unit in Camp Pendleton, California. And the next day, we went on a 25-mile hike carrying 135 pounds of stuff. And I hadn't done anything Marine Corps related in 2 years, man. That hump is what we call it. It's not a hike, it's a hump. It kicked my butt, man. I mean, I was like, why did I do this? I'm thinking the whole time, why did I do this? Why did I do this? And then we got back from that, and we deployed to Okinawa for 6 months. So I went to Okinawa, did 6 months in Okinawa. That was a great tour. I went to Korea. I did Team Spirit 1989 in Korea. We went to the Philippines. I got to see some places I would have never gotten to see if I hadn't gone back. But that was a real good tour. Came back from that and had only been home for a short amount of time when we got a call to go to the base theater. We went to the base theater, and everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, right? I mean, the base theater was the only place on base you could put 2,000 Marines. Here's 2,000 Marines in there, and do you know who General Mattis is?
Yeah.
James Mattis.
Mad Dog Mattis.
Mad Dog Mattis was my regimental commander when I was a young sergeant.
Did you know
in
him
the Marine
personally?
Corps. I have met him personally. We have shook hands and talked before, right? But he was our regimental commander. So he came out on the stage. We're all sitting in the theater. Now, we had only been back from Okinawa less than 4 months. He said, "Gentlemen, pack your bags. We are leaving in 48 hours. We're going to Kuwait." We're like, where the heck is Kuwait?
And what is
And
what is a
why are we
Kuwait?
going there? And it was because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990. And sure enough, man, within 48 hours, I'm talking about you go home. Now listen, we're not talking about you're going on a deployment to Okinawa. This is where it really gets real, right? We're not talking about you're going on a deployment to Okinawa where you're going to go out and you're going to do some liberty and some stuff like that. We're talking about you're going to war, right? War. What happens in war? People die.
You're
right?
going to shoot somebody.
So here I am. I'm not even a sergeant at that time. I'm still a corporal, right? I'm down at base legal filling out a power of attorney and a will, my last will and testament.
Golly.
You're doing all of that stuff.
It becomes
right?
real.
You're telling your wife when you go home that night, "Honey, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to Kuwait." She's like, "Where's Kuwait?" And then you say, "Look, I had to do a power of attorney and a will today, you know." And then you have to lay out all the things. If anything happens to me, you need to do this, 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 and this. And I'm talking about like big knot in your throat kind of thing, right? You're crying. Your kids are like, "Daddy, where are you going?" They're clinging to your leg, right? 48 hours later, Dee, we were in Orange County, California. We had M16s. We had all the ammo we could carry. We had packs. We had done our wills, power of attorneys, blood types. Everything was done. And we got on a transport plane and flew to Saudi Arabia. And I was over there for 9 months.
And you're not even mad at the guy. You don't even know what he's done.
No, but I'll tell you what, buddy. He was a bad, bad person. He was a bad person. Not only was he a bad person, he invaded that small country, and we see some of the things like that going on right now in Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. He invaded that country with the sole purpose of taking their oil. That's what he wanted. He wanted their oil. So when he invaded Kuwait and he expelled all those people and he kicked them out of there, he just indiscriminately, him and his children went in there and just killed whoever they wanted to kill. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason. It was just indiscriminate. If you're in my way, you're walking down the street, "I don't like the way that guy looks." Bang, you're dead. That went on all the time, right? And so here we are in Kuwait, and when we very first went over there, we had all of these multinational peacekeeping force. Now, it took a lot of time to start to build that coalition, but the initial coalition was not there for anything other than to stop Saddam Hussein from invading Saudi Arabia, which we had a partnership with, right? And we had a lot of people over there. So what we did was we set up a blocking force. So we defended Saudi Arabia that's what Desert Shield was. The shield was defending Saudi Arabia. The storm was when we pushed Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait back into Iraq. So, but it was the beginning. 1990 was the beginning of everything that has occurred since then in the Middle East, plus 9/11, plus all of those things that have gone along with it. So that one singular action in 1990 really embroiled us in the Middle East, and we've never fully gotten out of it.
So prior to that, it was just kind of like they're over there.
Yep.
But that started this whole thing.
And I think it had probably been, let's not forget, there was a failed attempt on the World Trade Center earlier. Remember, the first bomb they detonated was in the basement. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it didn't do the damage that they needed to do. Mm-hmm. That was I don't even know what year that was. But it was prior to the follow-ons to that. That was pretty significant. Now coming back from that, when that was over, at the end of that 9 months, we were very seasoned. I mean, we had seen some things, we had experienced some things. Unfortunately, very, very close to me, probably from here to the end of the back of your property, a young man was killed right in front of me the morning of the ground war starting. And
How long had you been there then?
I had been there, let's see, so we were there a total of 9 months. We got there in August. So the ground war started in February, so September, October, November, December. 6 months. 6 months. And there were a lot, Dee, there were so many people there, so many different coalitions and so many different elements of coalitions that all these people, you know, interacting and moving around each other. And I mean, you know, it was very hard to tell who's who. And those were some of the things that led to friendly fire incidents, okay? And, you know, so we did experience some of that as well. And, you know, I tell people even to this day, if you're in a war zone and you need to take a piss in the middle of the night, you better piss in your hole, because you're not going to get out and go do it, because there's a lot of trigger-happy people that are out there. Who goes there,
Yeah.
People will shoot first and ask questions later.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Hello, I'm Dee Burris, and most of you know me as a general contractor. In October of 2020, I started a podcast that I call The Discussion with Dee Burris. Each week, I have conversations with interesting, informative, and fascinating people from Cleveland and Bradley County and the surrounding areas. You can watch the discussion at dburris.com on YouTube and Facebook, where we would ask you to please subscribe, it's free, for updates and notifications of new shows. It's no problem. On the Courthouse Square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland, Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call. If you want residential or commercial plumbing, give Rick's Plumbing a call. Call Jason or Josh. They'll do you a good job. I use them. I've used them for years. They're no problem.
Come on, woo!
How do you go from a guy that's pulling a rubber snake across the road to and raised in a religious environment to being the guy that says, I'm ready to go, just say when? Does the military change that, or was it in you anyway?
No, you know what? I think the military does change that. Do you remember when I yelled at you a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so
How could I forget?
Fast forward. After Desert Storm, I went back to Paris Island and became a drill instructor.
But now, let's go back. When you're sitting there, that first in this, what they call it, basic training.
Yeah.
I'm often amazed at how the mind. Is it your opinion that the mind can overcome the body, or does the body over? Is there what's your? I mean, you know, you're out there running 10 miles, 15 miles, and you can't go any more.
You can. You can. I'm here to tell you the mind controls the body, okay? I went further and pushed harder at Parris Island as a recruit. There were things that I thought I would never be able to do that I was able to do, right?
But when does it kick in? Do you feel it? Is it the second wind, as these athletes say, or?
You know, I definitely think there is some second wind to it, but I also think there is this, you absolutely can't let them down.
But what about your legs when they get to hurting and you can't breathe anymore?
What about it? You just got to keep going.
But your legs are hurting and you can't breathe anymore. You just keep going?
You keep going.
Do you go harder or you just keep going?
Well, I think for some people they go harder. As we're talking right now, I'm thinking back to Vietnam, to a particular situation. There was a Marine, a lieutenant named Bobo. Now, I know you're familiar with Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. The highest medal for valor that you can receive, right? Well, a lot of those given out during Vietnam were posthumously. Most of those guys did not make it back, right? Lieutenant Bobo was one of those guys, but he defended his position. He lost his leg to an RPG, and you know what he did? He stuck his bleeding stump into the ground and continued to defend that position and call in artillery and stave off attack after attack after attack until he succumbed to his wounds. Where do you get that? Where do you get that? Where do you get that your self-preservation is now second to taking care of someone else? I'll tell you where you get that. You get that in the fighting spirit of something greater than yourself, right? We often, as military members, use greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his brother, right? Kyle Carpenter, another Marine who I personally know, who's from South Carolina, jumped on a grenade in Iraq to save his roommate. Jumped on a grenade, a live grenade. We have 3 or 4 Marines who are posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor in these most recent conflicts for diving on top of a live grenade and taking the full brunt of force with their body to save other Marines.
Do they put that in your head, or is that in human nature?
That is not in human nature. That is not in human nature. I think
because out here we don't do that.
I started to say most.
We throw up the finger if they run in front of us at the red light.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dee. I have told my wife, and I'm certainly not bragging about me because I am a coward just like the next guy. But I will tell you this: if there's a Walmart shooting, okay, I'm going to find the shooter and stop him. I am not going to run.
Is that what the military gave you?
I think so. I think so. I think that what we have is a desire to take care of others and take care of ourselves last. Officers in the military, enlisted people in the military, as you go higher in rank, right? Even in Desert Storm, right? We got hot chow once a month. Once a month. The rest of the time we were eating MREs, and you can only eat so many MREs. Meal ready to eat? You ever had one?
Oh, yeah.
All right. After about a week of MREs, you're going to have one a day if you have that because you're just so sick of it.
You don't even want it.
You don't even want it, right? Well, we would get a hot meal once a month. When we get that hot meal, they're only going to bring out enough chow for how many people you have said you have at your position. If you've said you have 30, they're going to bring out enough chow for 30, but you're going to have to ration it out, right? Senior enlisted Marines don't eat first. They eat last. Why? Because we got to take care of our Marines first. Everybody else has got to eat before I eat. I'm like that to this day. Everybody else has got to eat before I eat because I want to take care of my Marines. That's the loyalty factor, okay? It's just like General Mattis, all right? In Iraq, I wasn't there, but I've seen the speech when he went up on the hill and he said, we're going to go in there and we're going to kill these sons of a, right? And we're going to do what we've got to do, and then we're going back home to our families, right? Well, those Marines that are standing all around General Mattis, they're not thinking about, yeah, let's go kill him. They're thinking about, I got to take care of the guy on my left, and I got to take care of the guy on my right. That's what they're thinking about.
They're not thinking about necessarily the mission.
The mission is going to happen. The mission is going to happen, right?
So they teach, they put in these people the ability the need to follow the directions. And while they're following the directions, to take care of each other and their loved ones. That's it.
That's it. And following directions might get you killed, but guess what? You got to do it.
That's second nature.
That's right.
That's why if a shooter was in Walmart, you're jumping on him, not because you're trying to kill the shooter. Self-preservation and preservation
of the others around me. And I don't think there's very many people that are military-minded who don't have that mindset. I don't know. I mean, it's been 15 years. I've been out of the Marines 15 years. But I'm here to tell you this. I know that when I go to Disney in Florida and there's a guy across the way from me and he's wearing a Ranger hat or Airborne or Air Force or whatever it is, if something goes down, it's me and him, buddy. We're going to do whatever we need to do.
And you know he's there.
I know he's there. Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Well, it used to be weird, but it's not weird now, Dee. I was telling you about that master's degree. I have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And I'm here to tell you that the mind, right? The mind, what we do as Marines. Now, I can't speak for any other branch, okay? But what we do as Marines, we make Marines. We make guys and girls who are not going to think about themselves first. They're going to think about the guy to the left and the girl to the right. They're going to do what needs to be done. And that doesn't start in the body. That starts in the mind, right? That self-preservation is a far distant second to taking care of the guy to my left and to my right. And it starts in the mind. And I've never believed that more than I do now because I see people every day with anxiety and depression, and I work with people who have anxiety and depression. And there's only two ways to heal anxiety: medicine and coping skills. Okay? Medicine will only go so far, but coping skills are you grounding yourself and giving yourself gratitude, giving yourself the desire to move forward, right? Because it's hard. It's hard, right? This pandemic for the last 2 years, man, mental health is through the roof. Through the roof. I'll never not have a job, right? But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to help people help themselves. As a counselor, I can't help you unless you're ready to help you. You come to me and you're in my office, right? My goal is to help you help yourself so I don't have to see you again. My goal is not to have you for the next 6 years as my client. I want you to go out there and do what you need to do to get well. I need you to go out there and learn the skills that you need to learn so that you can be the best that you can be.
But now fill this gap between when you got out of the military and you became a counselor.
Man, that gap. Well, let me just say this. Let me go back. I want to go back and tell you about me becoming a drill instructor at Paris.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. After Desert Storm, I came back and I said, I want to become a drill instructor. And my mother immediately said, do you remember all those letters you wrote me when you were in boot camp and how bad you hated those drill instructors? I said, yes. She's like, please don't become a drill instructor. And I said, I'm going to do it. And so I did.
Did you literally hate the drill instructors while you were there?
In the beginning, when you're a recruit in the very beginning, you absolutely are terrified of them because they're so vicious.
What, 6 weeks?
Oh no, it's 12 weeks. And there's not 12 weeks with TV and you get some liberty and you get a phone call. No, at Paris Island, it's 12 weeks and you have nothing from the time you get there to the time you leave. The number one reason that young people today are not making it at Paris Island, proven fact, is because they're not used to being yelled at. Okay? You take kids that are on their phone all the time and now we're going to send them down to a place that's just not right.
And they're trying to break them down, and they're probably breaking them down easier than they used to.
Right.
Do they ever just send them home, say, hey, this guy's...
Absolutely, man. When I was a drill instructor at Paris Island, if you came to Paris Island and you really wanted to be a Marine, you were going to put up with everything that I was dishing out. And, buddy, that little thing I just gave you, that was one breath. Okay? We could go for 10 minutes if you'd like. I'm just saying that as a drill instructor, your job at Paris Island is to either make Marines or send people home who thought they wanted to be a Marine but don't have the mindset to say, I'm going to stay no matter what.
What's different about the mind that makes them say, I'm going to stay no matter what? If you can't climb the mountain or scale that wall, you can't scale the wall. Or are you saying, yes, you can?
You can do anything you put your mind to. You've heard it before, okay? I have seen kids come to Parris Island who the very first day I had them when I was a drill instructor said, this kid is not going to make it. And then it takes one time having them standing on line yelling and screaming and giving it 110%, right? Then I'm looking at this kid saying, okay, I might have misjudged this kid. This kid really wants to be here. This kid really wants to be a Marine. But then you take them, man, and you really do break them down. I mean, you break them down, you get rid of all of that mama and papa. When you call, when they get on the phone that first night they arrive at Parris Island and call home, you need to watch sometime. There's a PBS special called The Making of the Marines.
I saw that.
Okay.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Is that real?
That is absolutely real. But you just think about this. It can only be as real as you're being recorded on a camera, right? So if I'm being recorded on a camera...
Oh, it's even worse.
Exactly. It's a lot worse. It's a lot worse, right? I literally had people who, people who were police officers. I had people who were prior other branches of the military who made it 2 days. 2 days and left, right? You get them.
A tough guy.
You break them down. Yes, you break them down. And if there's a guy, and let me say something, Dee. Well, we can talk about that in a minute, but let me just say this. Everybody's going to break. Everybody's going to break, and that's okay. That's not what we care about. What we care about is what happens after you break. Do you remain broken, or do you say, I've broken it down to the very basics. I'm not at home anymore, but I still want to be a Marine. I'm still going to make this work. Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm going to do whatever I have to take to be a Marine. And that's where you see growth. That's where you see the stretch in the mind. That's where you see this little guy who could never do anything at home, who is suddenly going to walk across the deck at Parris Island wearing dress blues, and absolutely he made it.
So he wasn't necessarily the tough guy. It was tough in the mind.
Yep.
Boy.
Yep. I loved being a drill instructor. It was probably one of the best tours I ever had.
Do you think you were slightly more compassionate to the...
No. There's no compassion when you're a drill instructor, Dee. Here's the thing. If I'm compassionate while I'm a drill instructor at Parris Island, somewhere down the road, that guy that I gave a break, an inch, that guy's going to get somebody killed. Okay? I want every person who walks across the Parris Island parade deck. Now, again, let's temper this with, this is 1992 when this happened, okay? My views today, sitting here at this table wearing a Marine Corps uniform, do not necessarily represent the Marine Corps' views. They represent my views from 1992 as a drill instructor. That's my disclaimer right now, okay? Let me tell you this. In 1992, when I was a drill instructor, there was no way I was cutting anybody a break. Because at some point in the future, that person that I cut a break may get more than 30 people killed. Okay? I'm not cutting anybody a break. You either want this more than you've ever wanted anything in your life with all your blood, your heart, your soul, and your strength, or you don't. That's it, bottom line. And if you want it, you're going to do everything it takes to make it. I have seen people that have broken a bone at Parris Island, and it was going to take them 6 months to heal. And they say, son or daughter, you've got a choice. You can stay here in rehab for 6 months, or we'll send you home. And when it heals, we'll take a look at you again, and you might get back in. What do you think they do? They stay right there at Parris Island for 6 months in a rehab platoon so they can continue moving forward in their training. There's not a chance in the world they want to go home. And the ones that do go home, more than likely won't come back, because guess what? If something tasted bad the first time you had it, it more than likely ain't going to taste any better the second time, right? So if you have a chance to not have to do it again, why would you go back, right? So people that make it through Parris Island and wear that uniform, they have earned it. They have earned every minute of it. And it's the drill instructor's job to make sure that they earn it, okay? Because every one of us have stood on those yellow footprints and did the exact same thing that those recruits did. Every one of us.
So it's not the guy that's the strongest, it's the guy that physically, it's the guy that's strongest mentally.
Correct.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting to me.
It is. It's absolutely. Your body will give out long before your mind gives out.
And the mind can read you.
I mean, if you think you can do it, you can do it.
Like the book, I Think I Can, the little engine that could. So that's real.
The guys in Vietnam that were in the Hanoi Hilton, okay, that were POWs, every one of them broke. Every one of them were tortured till they broke, right? But what they didn't do was they never quit. They never quit. They created a code. They had a tapping system. They had everything it took to have a hierarchy, a chain of command. They would check on each other. They broke, but they didn't quit. That's
so
the
they
difference.
failed, but they didn't quit. There's a difference.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And today we're teaching that. I just came from a course in January. I was in Virginia at a place called Boulder Crest. Boulder Crest has a program. We have 10 sites around the United States. We send veterans to these sites who are not doing well, who are not gaining insight and reassimilating into society. How many veterans do we have a day committing suicide? Between 22 and 26 a day.
Do you think it's because they need a mountain to climb and there's not a mountain to climb?
Yes.
They don't have a real emergency?
When I send you to Iraq or Afghanistan, you have a purpose and a mission. And you're going to do everything that you can to complete the purpose and the mission. But there's more to it than that, okay? There's dopamine, there's things that are released in the mind when you are in those types of actions, and it's pleasurable, okay? It's just like an addict. Okay, an addict is not more than likely doing cocaine because cocaine is good. An addict is doing cocaine because there's something released in the mind that gives them that euphoria. Okay, I have seen it time and time again. I saw it when we came back from Desert Storm. We had guys who could not get rid of that desire for more. They wanted more. So what do if you can't get more and you're back here stateside? You buy a fast motorcycle or a fast car.
Never fails.
Or you do something, you find a way to get into that action every day so you can continue to have that same high. And unfortunately, on a motorcycle, most people die.
Similar to Rambo. I know that movie was fictitious,
absolutely.
But he came in on a motorcycle. He was needing the dopamine, that high.
You need something you can't get here. That's why reassimilation is so hard, okay? Now, I can't speak for every veteran, okay? And we have a lot of different veterans and we have a lot of different problems, but we do have, and we are starting to learn that there are ways to help people reassimilate into civilian society. And that's where something called post-traumatic growth comes into play, PTG, okay? So I went to a program this year at Boulder Crest in Virginia. We do not have one in Tennessee. If I had it my way, we'd have one in every state in the United States. But Boulder Crest is a program that was created by a guy named Kim Flake. He was an explosive ordnance guy in the Navy. And when he got back, he would have people come to his farm. He had this cabin and places that people could come and rejuvenate, right? Well, what he had these guys that were broken, like they might have lost a leg or lost an arm or something like that. But that weren't the ones that were broken. The ones that were broken here, right? And so he had this program where he would have these people come up to his farm. Well, over and over and over again, he would talk to wives of men who had PTSD. And PTSD, my friend, is something far different, right? PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran or not. There's plenty of people right here in Bradley County that have PTSD. A child can have PTSD from seeing his mother killed in a car accident. A man or a woman can have PTSD from seeing their husband or wife die traumatically. Trauma is trauma, and it's terrible.
You could be 18 years old and you have a girlfriend or a 25-year-old guy that finds out his wife's cheating on him and it just blows his mind. I guess that could be it too, right?
I think...
Does it have to be something? See, to them it could be traumatic.
The trauma has got to be something that absolutely alters the way that you think and you act. Okay? So finding out your wife is cheating on you is one thing. Finding out your wife is cheating on you and going and shooting her dead, okay, and her kids see it, there's some trauma. You know what I'm saying?
The others just...
The trauma is the trauma. Now, I'm not saying that the guy who does that action hasn't at some point in the past suffered from trauma, but what I am saying is that PTSD is a debilitating condition that most people who have it have to learn a way to move through it.
All right, now let's say that.
And let me say this: I'm not a doctor. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not. That's obvious, isn't it? But let's say that I guess this PTSD or anxiety and stress after being in war and battle and stuff, I guess that happened 200 years ago, right? This is nothing new. They just gave it a name later on.
Correct.
So, how do you solve people from this?
You don't solve them. What you do is you teach them a way to move forward. It's just like anxiety and depression, right? That's where post-traumatic growth comes from. I was telling you, this Ken Flake had all these people coming to his farm, right? And he would talk to these wives of these service members, and they were all crying and upset because their husbands have PTSD, right? So Ken Flake said, we got to fix this. Can we fix PTSD? And so he went all around the United States looking, talking to doctors and scientists about what they could do. Well, at the University of North Carolina, he met a guy there. I think the guy's name is Tedeschi. But he taught him something called PTG, post-traumatic growth, right? Post-traumatic growth is an alternative to PTSD. So what post-traumatic growth does, it teaches you a way to struggle well. So let me just throw this at you, okay? If we were to walk into the Cleveland Mall today, and everyone who has problems in their lives had a little bubble over their head and it said what the problem was, there's probably not anybody in the mall that doesn't have something going on. We all struggle. We all struggle, Dee, right? Mm-hmm. But do you struggle badly or do you struggle well? A lot of people don't know how to struggle well, right? What's struggling well? Struggling well is taking that struggle that you have, acknowledging that you have a struggle, and then using coping mechanisms to move forward, right? So there's lots of coping skills, right? Think about taking a walk in the park, right?
Now, if I'm sitting here with PTSD and my mind's messed up and I don't even know I've got PTSD, I just get... And
you're just not going to be around people. You're just going to
I'm just going to be in my house, and you come up to me and say, take a walk, and I'm saying, are you crazy? A walk's not going to solve my problems.
Right.
I need real answers here.
That's exactly right.
So now what do you do?
It's a whole lot more than that. So this program that I went to at Boulder Crest in Bluemont, Virginia. I think it's Bluemont, Virginia. 7 days. They take 7 veterans. They put them together for 7 days. Let me tell you something, Dee. Okay? I've been out of the Marines 15 years. I've been an ROTC instructor. I've done a lot of great things, right? It was the first time since I left the Marines in 2006 that I felt like I was home. The first time. I was with 7 other guys that were all combat veterans, right? And together for 7 days, we learned about post-traumatic growth. We learned about disclosure. We learned bad things happen in combat, right? We all know that. And we all deal with bad things. That's right, absolutely, it is war. But you have to survive, right? And sometimes what you do to survive is not so pretty.
It's embarrassing or whatever.
It could be.
Whatever.
It might be something that you don't ever want to discuss again in your life, right? But at this program that we were in, we were able to disclose in a group to a group of people who are just like us, and we built a team. And in 7 days, we built a team of 7 guys who have all gone through like and similar combat experiences, right? And we learned how to grow. We learned how to struggle well instead of struggling badly. See, for 15 years out there by myself, I was doing okay. But let me tell you this, buddy. My wife knows from experience, if we're going to a restaurant, the very first thing she asks me when we walk in the door is, where do you want to sit? Because she knows where I want to sit. Where do I want to sit? I want to sit with my back to the wall and my face to the door. I want to see every person that comes in that door, because guess what? I'm already looking at you when you walk in the door. Do you have a bulge in the back of your shirt? Are you carrying a gun? Are you looking around the room? Are you seeing where the cash register is? Are you going to rob the place?
Looking at the facial expressions.
I want to know everything about that person, right? And my wife would walk into some restaurants with me and say, okay, might want to stay here. It's pretty crowded in here, right? Okay, that's hypervigilance. Okay, that is a part of PTSD. But hypervigilance is something that many, many military people have because of the experiences that they've had in the combat war zone. It's just like when we lost those Marines recently in Afghanistan at the gate when the guy came up and blew himself up, right? All those guys that were there that experienced that, okay, I guarantee you none of them want to be in a crowded mall today. None of them want to be anywhere where there's a crowd where they can't discern who's here and there and there and there, right? We're creating these environments for our people that unfortunately we're going to have to help them learn from. Because guess what? Just like going to Parris Island, how long did I tell you it was? 12 weeks. How long do you think we help people reassimilate into civilian society?
None, maybe.
2 days.
2 days.
We don't talk about reassimilation. We don't talk about stress and trauma. We don't send you through a mental health interview. We don't do any of those things. You're getting out of the Marines. Congratulations, you've done a great job. Shake my hand, here's your medals, go on about your merry way. And we let guys and girls come back out here and they have no way how to reassimilate into civilian society because we don't belong to this society. We belong to a society where somebody has your back.
In a sense, we're sending them out to war then. Does that make sense? Because here you got help, there you don't.
Yeah, so that program that I went to, it was 7 days all together, all paid for. I mean, all your meals, all your food, your lodging, everything, 7 days paid for. We have 10 of them. The closest one to here is Camp Southern Ground down in Georgia. The Zach Brown Band runs Camp Southern Ground. They have summer camps there, but they also have, it's called Boulder Crest, it's called Warrior Path, okay? Progressive, alternative, training and healing for heroes. That's what PATH stands for. And that's this program, this PTG program that I'm talking about, right? So after you do your 7 days, then you have an additional 6 months of watching a 2 to 3 minute video every day and reconnecting with your Warrior Path teammates once every 2 weeks by Zoom video, right?
So you could almost say it's more of a soft landing than just you're here.
Yeah, but the problem with what we're doing here with this program that I'm telling you about is we can only do 7 veterans at any one site. So imagine the amount of people that we're putting out of the military all the time, right? And imagine how many people that we're putting out of the military never say they have a problem or never even admit that they have PTSD, right? They're just going into their home and they're not coming out. They're self-medicating on alcohol. They're self-medicating on drugs. They're not getting the help they need mentally, right? And that is going to be their survival. And that, my friend, is where I talk about to you that our mind is so much stronger if we train, if we help you to understand that yes, you did go through something traumatic. Yes, you have dealt with these situations. No, I can't give you that high that you were getting over there in Afghanistan where the dopamine is released and you get all of this pleasure, right? But what I can do is help you learn some coping skills and struggle well, right?
Not stop the struggle.
Absolutely. We're not going to stop struggling. We're all going to struggle. Some people struggle with money. Some people struggle with addiction. Some people struggle with... Struggle is struggle, man. And you know what we say now? Struggle well. Struggle well. Lean into it and struggle well because it's going to happen. And you know what happens to me, right? Last week it happened to me. Something happened at my house that was not something I planned, right? And it made me upset, right? That's struggle. But what are you going to do with that? Right? Are you going to take it and be upset and pissed off at the world and not go out and talk to your neighbors for the day, right? Or are you going to say, this happened, I've got to move forward with it. I've got to find a way to ground and do some coping skills and keep going. That's what I'm going to do, right? Because that's what someone has helped me to learn. When I went to that Boulder Crest program in January, I didn't think I needed to go. Because my other pastime that I didn't tell you about is I'm an equine therapist. I do horse therapy with veterans and first responders, right? I work with horses. Equine therapy.
Yeah. They do that at the Tri-State Center here now.
Yeah.
They take people that's,
Yep.
and it's something about horses and riding it.
It's amazing. We don't do any riding. We only do groundwork.
Just like pet the horse?
Well, it's more than that. It's more than pet the horse. If you were to come to me, if you were a client of mine and you're a veteran and you're struggling with anxiety and depression and you come into me, I'll say, Dee, how are you doing today? Yeah, I'm okay. What would you like to work on today? Well, I'm a little anxious. I've got some events coming up. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about the events. Once we learn what the events are that you have coming up, we take you and the horse that you pick and we put you in the arena and we give you all of these tools and toys. It could be balls, it could be cones, it could be noodles from the pool. And we have you recreate what you have going on in your life, and then you and your horse navigate that course.
But it works.
Oh, it works. It's the most amazing thing in the world. But so where I work in South Carolina, I'm an equine therapist at a program that has a warrior path. So I was seeing the warrior path going on all the time and thinking to myself, man, I'm really glad somebody's helping all these guys that need it. I wasn't thinking I needed any help. I was thinking about, man, I'm really glad these guys are all getting the help they need, right? Come to find out, when I went to Boulder Crest up there in Virginia, I needed it too. Because again, like I told you, first time in 15 years that I have felt like I was in a community of people who gave a rat's rip about who I was or what I had to say or what I was doing in my life. And when I came back from it, my wife could tell the difference. She could tell that I was a different person.
Do you think the PTSD comes after you've been back into society, or is it created in the military environment? Does that make sense? Or is it just the...
I think it is created as you go along in the military environment. I think you have it when you come back from that debilitating action and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, one of the first things that I did is I was getting this master's degree in clinical mental health counseling is I did an internship at an outpatient behavioral facility in Colombia. And I worked with a Vietnam veteran who's 71 years old. He has a successful construction business. He has everything points in the right direction. He's never had any problems with anything. But yet here he was in my outpatient program because he had struggled with suicide and he had PTSD. And the PTSD never reared its head till he was 71 years old. And what happened was something triggered it, right? Something from his past triggered an action in him that recreated for him, and that PTSD became full blown. So here he is.
It was created in the military.
Yes. But
a smell or something.
Exactly. A trigger. That's what we call a trigger. So you're in the mall, right, and you hear a sound. You know, you think it's a gunshot or something.
Or you hear
like
that song that was playing at the same time, whatever.
There you go.
The trigger.
Yeah, that's the trigger, and that immediately takes you back into that place. You become anxious. For a lot of veterans, they have a panic attack or...
Now I've got this friend of mine that claims he has, and he's not been in the military, but I think it still applies. He says, when I have these panic attacks, my heart starts beating heavy, my left arm hurts, my chest gets tight. I want to call the ambulance, and I just want to. I can't even leave Cleveland, he says. He went to the doctor twice, went to the emergency room twice. They say, hey, you got palpitations, and they give it all these names.
It's called stress.
It's just stress.
It's called
stress. All it is.
But you say all it is, Dee. For you, it's probably something that you
can
deal with. But for somebody else, it's debilitating. Right?
It's debilitating.
It takes you to your knees. You can't do anything about it. Yes, I've had it happen to me. I've absolutely had it happen to me.
He's like this. He's literally debilitated.
But just like anybody else, there is a possibility for growth. right? There's a great book out there called Body Keeps the Score. It talks about trauma in the body, right? We can only take on so much trauma. After a certain amount of time, the trauma is going to overwhelm the body, right? Anxiety, all right, stress, okay? Depends on what you got going on in your life. The biggest thing that I teach today to people now that I'm a counselor is boundaries. We don't have boundaries. People do not have boundaries. For instance, your phone rings tomorrow night and it's your buddy, right? And he really wants to talk to you. It's 10 o'clock at night. All right, well, you know that you start to wind down at 10 o'clock, but guess what? You're going to take that call. You know why? Because you don't have a boundary on that, right? You have to take care of you first, okay? If you don't take care of you first, you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else. So boundaries are very, very important, and they start with what we're going to allow other people to do to us. If I see that my phone is ringing and I know it's a guy that I know and he's going to occupy an hour of my time with woe is me stories, okay, I've got to decide right then and there, am I going to answer that call and talk to him for an hour? Am I going to answer that call and say, hey, bud, I can talk to you for 20 minutes? Am I going to answer that call and say, I can talk to you for 10? Or am I not going to answer that call? Those are boundaries, right? We don't set boundaries for ourselves. Our society, especially since COVID, is people work 24 hours a day. Your phone rings, you're getting emails, you're getting text messages, right? All times of the day and night, because we don't have a boundary on at 6 o'clock in the evening, my work day ends and my pleasure life begins. And so from 6 o'clock on, I'm going to set my phone down, right? If I want to pick it up and read Facebook or look at the news, I'm going to do that. But I'm not doing work. 6 o'clock is my drop dead. That's my boundary, right? We've got to start doing that for ourselves, because if we don't take care of ourselves, again, I know as a counselor, I see 15 to 17 clients a week for an hour each, okay? I could see double that if I wanted to, but I don't. I'm about to be 58 years old. I have some boundaries, and one of my boundaries is I'm not going to take on more than I believe I can take on. That's number one. Number two is I'm also going to make sure that whatever I take on, I'm able to capably handle them and my welfare. So my welfare comes first. Okay, my welfare comes first. We don't do that. We as a society do not do that. We take care of everybody who calls us with every problem that they've got. We take on all of that
We're
stress.
afraid we'll forget the text.
There you go.
So we'll go at the email.
Put a notebook beside your bed, put a pen with it. When you wake up at midnight and realize that there's something that you didn't do, you write it down in your notebook, and then you have to tell yourself, I'll take care of this tomorrow. Because if you don't, you'll lay there and agonize over it for hours. The mind, Dee, the mind, okay, is so powerful. It's so powerful. And it controls so much, right? But we can control the mind. The mind and the brain are different things, right? Mind and brain are not the same.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Hello, I'm Dee Burris, and most of you know me as a general contractor. In October of 2020, I started a podcast that I call The Discussion with Dee Burris. Each week, I have conversations with interesting, informative, and fascinating people from Cleveland and Bradley County and the surrounding areas. You can watch the discussion at dburris.com on YouTube and Facebook, where we would ask you to please subscribe, it's free, for updates and notifications of new shows. It's no problem. On the Courthouse Square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call. If you want residential or commercial plumbing, give Rick's Plumbing a call. Call Jason or Josh. They'll do you a good job. I use them. I've used them for years. They're no problem.
Come on. Woo!
Now, when you say the mind and the brain is not the same thing, explain that.
Well, the brain is matter. The brain is matter. There's parts of the brain, right? But the mind is what we think. The mind
Where is the mind here too?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Now, does a chemical deficiency in the brain cause the mind to believe one thing that's not really true? Absolutely, right? A chemical imbalance in the brain can change the whole game. Something that, is just as simple as it could be. People who suffer from depression quite possibly have some chemical imbalance that causes them to not have the same thought or the same belief, right? And that's why we have medication, right? That's why it's so important for us to remember this is one of the key turning points in mental health, right? Simone Biles. You know who she is?
That's the Olympic gymnast that first came out and said, hey, I get depressed.
That's exactly right. But guess what? Before Simone Biles, people just did not look at mental health or problems with mental health as something that was significant, right? Here we have somebody, and I don't really know Simone Biles personally, but I know that this is a person who had trained their entire life to be an Olympian, right? And now we're at the Olympic Games. Now this is her shot, right? To absolutely go out there and blow it out of the water and win the gold. And what does she do? She stands up and she says, hold up, time out. I'm not mentally where I need to be. The world is like, what? Right? Mental health is finally, for the first time, front and center. Because guess what, Dee? Even in the military today, we are not looking at mental health. Even out here in society, we are not looking at mental health, right? How many people go to a chiropractor? How many people go to a massage therapist, right? Probably a small segment of the society, because there's a taboo associated with getting your neck cracked or getting your back cracked or getting yourself fixed, right? Acupuncture, things of that nature, right? We're just not doing them, right? But mental health, whoa, mental health is even worse than all of those things. God forbid anybody know that I might be going to see a counselor because I'm having some stress issues, I'm having some anxiety, I'm having some depression. A lot of that depression, a lot of that anxiety and stress, a lot of these conditions are brought on by chemical imbalances in the brain. And that's why we have medication. Do you know what one of the main reasons is? People have to come back again and again. They get better. They start taking their meds for depression and anxiety. And now they're 14, they're 20 days into taking their medication. And man, this feels great. I don't need this medicine anymore. I am back. I'm cured. And they stop taking it and they go right back to where they were.
And you can't make them take it no more because now their brain's messed up.
Can't make them take it, but the key thing here is that coping skills alone for most people is not enough. If you need a depression or an anxiety medicine, if a doctor prescribes you with a depression or anxiety medicine, you need to take it, right? But along with that, there comes a healthy dose of reality, right? If you're not taking your meds regularly like you're supposed to, obviously they're not going to work the way they're supposed to work. That's number one. Number two is, if you're taking your meds and your meds are making you have suicidal tendencies, things of that nature, you need to go back to your doctor. And you need to say to your doctor, this is what my meds are doing for me. I need something different, because we have so many different types of medications out there for people, right? The first time that you take something, it might not be the medicine that you need, right? You might need to take something different than that. Add to that therapy, okay? This is Simone Biles at the Olympics says, whoa, time out. I need a mental health break. I need a little bit of help here, right? She ultimately went on and competed in the games after she got herself to where she was supposed to be. We don't do that, right? People don't admit that they have a mental health issue, right? So what do we have instead? We have all these people wandering around out here saying, what am I going to do? I can't fix myself. No, you can't. But you could ask for help, right? You could go see your doctor and he can give you a recommendation and he can recommend you to go see a therapist, right? Who may be able to help you. But it's just like I said to you a few minutes ago, Dee. You can come to me every day and say, I've got a problem, will you help me? And my answer is absolutely, I will help you. Are you willing to help yourself? Because if you're not in 100% yourself, how can I help you? Right? I cannot fix you if you are not willing to help yourself, right?
And how can you put them in a state to where they're wanting to help because they're depressed?
Well,
it's like a dog chasing its tail.
It is, but you got to get them on the medication first. You've got to get them to a point where they're starting to come out of this depression. Now, with the post-traumatic growth model that we were talking about a few minutes ago, right? One of the first things that we do is an attitude of gratitude, right? You begin every morning. We journal. I journal every morning. Every morning I write down my thoughts. I also, the very first thing I do when I roll out of bed is, what am I thankful for today? It could be the air I breathe. It could be the fact that I have
hot water.
Exactly, right? Mm-hmm. There's got to start to be something in your life that you're thankful for, because there's a lot of people that have it a whole lot worse than we do, and they're okay. So why aren't we okay? And the answer is, we're not okay because we're not seeing the greener side of things. We're only seeing the dull side of things, right? So some of it's going to be medication for some of it. Some of it's going to be coping skills for some people. Some of it's going to be both of those things. And some of it's going to be a long time in therapy. Some of it's going to be a long time in therapy.
Now what does the medications do? We go back to, I had this other friend that was, he worked for me. And he started getting crazier and crazier. And he now walks the streets. They tried to put him on medicine. They could never get it right. So they really don't have that figured out
There's so
yet.
much we don't know.
And so many people now, I'll be honest with you, the people that I know that are coping with mental illness are a lot of people that are on mushrooms, psychedelics. Some of them smoke pot.
So,
I know that's taboo,
right.
But I'm just saying I know them and they seem to deal better with it. So what's the difference between, is there any validity in that?
Well, so we've got to go back and we've got to talk about where we got to where we are, okay? So I presented at the South Carolina Counseling Association in February, and what we talked about was psychedelics and how psychedelics are being used today to treat PTSD with success, okay? And Rick Dalbin is the founder of MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Agency for Psychedelics, right? He founded this agency. Now what happened, of course, obviously we know back in the 60s, psychedelics were classified as a Schedule I drug, which completely removed them from the arena of testing, except in the clinical lab. There were a lot of people who never gave up. As a matter of fact, when Nixon made psychedelics a Schedule I drug, we had over 1,000 studies going on the healing effects of psychedelics on the human mind. 1,000.
Now wasn't Helter Skelter in one of those studies?
Yes. So,
what was his name?
I think you might be talking about Ram Dass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Ram Dass and Timothy O'Leary were both professors at Harvard. Okay. And so what happened was they had a Harvard psilocybin study, which is mushrooms, right? And so what they did was they were taking students and they were giving them an option of taking a final exam or trying psilocybin? What student's going to take a final exam when they can take psilocybin, right? But what happened was they were misusing the study that they were having, right? And so in the end, Timothy O'Leary and Ram Dass were fired from Harvard, okay? But they didn't stop using psychedelics. They kept using psychedelics, and they kept using them with successes, only they were outside of the laboratory. Well, again, you got to look at the anti-culture movement that was going on in the 60s. We had Vietnam was ramping up. We had this cultural movement that was going on with all these kids that were now trying psychedelics, mushrooms, LSD, all of these things, right? And the U.S. government said, we absolutely cannot have this. This is a counterculture. This is a problem. We got to stop it, right? And that's when LSD and MDMA became Schedule I drugs, right? Psilocybin was not until a couple of years later, but it did eventually hit the Schedule I list, and so that's when all of that stopped, every bit of that, right? And so it's been in the laboratory ever since then. But praise be, there were some people who never stopped studying psychedelics. Now, Rick Doblin in MAPS, if you go out on YouTube and you type in Rick Doblin, MAPS, there's a video out there you can watch, and he talks about how they are curing, not a Band-Aid, they are curing veterans who have PTSD using psilocybin and LSD or MDMA. And MDMA is a derivative of LSD, okay? Now, the other thing that's being used with great success, but not in the United States, is called ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a tea, okay? And it is primarily found in the jungles of Latin America. We actually have a veterans agency here in the United States called VETS. And basically it's Marcus, I think his name is Capone, and his wife. And what they do is they founded this agency called VETS. And they send veterans to Latin American countries to go through these ayahuasca ceremonies. And they come back, and when they come back, they are completely cured of PTSD.
Now, on those ayahuasca things, they do microdosing of mushrooms and all of that stuff. And what is it that makes those things help? I don't know.
So let me say this. So when I very first got into the counseling arena and decided I wanted to be a counselor, I was looking at PTSD, and I stumbled upon how MDMA, again, a derivative of LSD, is being used to treat PTSD, right? And so how is it being used to treat PTSD? It's a very, very restrictive environment. So basically, let's say that you're a veteran and you have PTSD and it has debilitated you. You don't come out of your house, you stay in your house all the time, right? I'm your therapist, okay? We're going to go through and we're going to do MDMA. But it doesn't work just like that. There's another part of that, right? Because today what we find is mushrooms are out here in our society again. We have Colorado, there's all kinds of states who are starting to legalize drugs, right? And they're legalizing things like psilocybin. They're legalizing MDMA. They're legalizing things of that nature in these states, right? Well, guess what? You can go out and take mushrooms on your own and have PTSD, and it won't help you one bit, right? Because you're not doing it the way that it's got to be done, right? So you've got to have a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist that works through this with you. So if I were to lay the groundwork for you, the way it works is you come to me and you're like, hey, I have PTSD. I want to go through MDMA therapy. I'm like, okay, good to go. So we meet. And we meet for 3 months together, you and I, without ever talking about MDMA. What we're doing is we're building a foundation. It's just like you hear about the 3 pigs or building a foundation on sand or concrete, right? We're going to build a concrete foundation. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a friendship between the two of us where I start to find out who you are, what you've done, what you did in the military. We're not going to talk about whatever that action was that caused this trauma in your life. We're just going to build up to the point where we're building a scaffold, right? After 90 days, we're going to have one MDMA session. You're going to come into my office. I'm going to put you in there in a room. You're going to be on a couch. I'm going to have a doctor in the room. I'm going to be in the room. you're going to be in the room, and we're going to lay you in a comfortable position. You're going to put eye shades over your heads, and you're going to take 1 tablet of MDMA. I believe it's 25 milligrams. It's not a lot, okay? You're going to take 1 tablet of MDMA. As you go into this trip on MDMA, now what we're going to do is I'm going to pick up the scenario that we've been building on for 90 days, and I'm going to take you into your trauma, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about what your trauma was. But what's happened is, understand what MDMA does to the mind. It disconnects the mind from the debilitating, whatever the thing is. You talked earlier about your friend who has panic attacks, okay? On psilocybin or MDMA, those panic attacks are subdued. They're no longer activated, right? There is a network in the brain that does not get activated because you're on MDMA. It sort of like mutes it. Okay, now what you're able to do is you're able to walk through your trauma with me almost as a third person. You have no tremors, you have no anxiety, you have no nothing. You're just able to talk to me about what went on at that time in your life. You don't even have to go, we're not going to go through the whole thing, because guess what? We're going to do 3 sessions of MDMA. This is only the first one. We did a 90-day build-up. You do a session with MDMA. Now we're adding more to the story. After that session is over, you'll come back to my office and we'll go through another 30 days of building on what we've learned thus far. Now we're going to do session 2. Session 2, I'm going to take you all the way through where we were the first time, and we're going to go further into your trauma. Okay? Again, the same thing occurs. You take a small dose of MDMA. Halfway through, you're going to take another dose to continue that high so we can go through what we've got going on, and we're going to build a scaffold. By the time you're done with that third one, more than likely you don't even have PTSD anymore. In the study that Rick Dolben did, so we had to go through 3 clinical trials. The first clinical trial was for the efficacy of the drug itself. Is this a drug that can be used safely in a clinical environment? And the study found yes, it was. The second study that they did was a very small amount of people. It was like 5 or 10 people, right? Could this drug be something that is used in this? Yes, it was. We just finished phase 3 trials. In Rick Dolben's video, he has like 58 veterans who go through this thing, right? Out of the 58 veterans that go through it, 45 of them are completely cured of PTSD, and the rest of them, as the time goes on, so 6 months after the trial, veterans who were not as healed from it are more healed from it as time goes on. Why? Because the PTSD, I'm sorry, not the PTSD, the MDMA or the psilocybin that was used in the study is still there in the brain and is still allowing the mind to continue to move forward.
To disconnect from the trauma.
Exactly.
And to look at it in a rational manner or something?
Yes. Yes. So I worked at this presentation that I had. I work with a doctor who does MDMA treatments through the FDA for this trial, right? And he's not a veteran, and he's not even from the United States. He's actually Russian. And he has been just amazed by the results and the things that he has seen from veterans who come into this and then what they look like after they're done. He said, I will be forever changed just by seeing people who in the beginning were absolutely just not coming out. They would not, leave their house. They were very closed. And he goes, you put them into this MDMA trial, you walk through them with this therapy, and when it's over, they're cured and they walk away. So remember when we talked about a few minutes ago, we were talking about how mushrooms and MDMA and all of those things are now legal again, and there are people that are taking them, but they're not being healed of anything. Well, there's another project called the Zendo Project, and the Zendo Project is a group of people who go to, let's say, the Burning Man. The Burning Man concert that's out in the desert, okay?
Yeah.
The Zendo Project has a group of therapists, and what they do is they sit with people who are taking a drug, psilocybin, MDMA. So let's say you're at this Burning Man concert and you've taken a tab of MDMA and you're feeling really strange. You can leave and go over to the Zendo tent, and you can go into the tent, meet with a therapist, sit down, and that therapist will sit with you and hold space with you until you're done with that trip. Now, the goal of that is to help people who cannot help themselves, because what we have is we have a lot of people who are hearing about the effects and the cures with psychedelics, but they're not going to a therapist to get it. Right? They're just out there on their own trying to make it work for themselves.
Isn't it strange that anybody that's not aware of all of this, they would think that you was talking about druggies.
Exactly.
Potheads.
Exactly.
Dope addicts.
This is not mainstream.
But in other words, in the early 60s, it started out as kind of a good idea that might help. And then the Nixon administration kind of axed it.
It was actually before the 60s.
And now we're thinking it's bad, bad, bad. But what you're saying is they found a necessity for these things.
So there are currently over 60 trials being conducted in the United States that don't have anything to do with veterans. They're using it for alcohol. They're using it for addictions. They're using it for anxiety. They're using it for depression. All of these trials that are going on in labs are actually being tested on people that have nothing to do with the military, right? And they are finding time after time after time that these things work, right? These things work to help people cure their mind, right? There's a saying that goes, and I don't know who says it, I wish I could quote it to you right now, but it says, compared to what we ought to be, we are only halfway there. The mind is so vast, we know so little about the mind, that only in the last 30 years have we really started to tap the potential of what we can do with the mind, right? So you take an ayahuasca, or you take a psilocybin, or an MDMA, and you apply that to someone who actually needs help, right? And you have a therapist there with them, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist. That is what I want to do eventually in the end. But right now, there's no place for me because obviously it's still a Schedule I drug, right? But if I lived in Oklahoma or Colorado or one of these places where these drugs are now legal, I would absolutely be doing this every day instead of seeing people with anxiety and depression and trying to help them with coping skills and medicine. Because guess what? There's something out there that's better than all of that. It's just not legal.
And this other thing we've been doing, let's face it, it's not working.
It does not work in a lot of the cases. Coping skills are only going to go so far, right? We've got to heal the mind. Remember what we started this conversation a few minutes ago with? The brain and the mind are not the same thing, right? We can help the brain, right, to heal. But how do you heal the mind? The healing of the mind takes something more than what we have right now at our disposal. And that's what all of these clinical trials are doing. So if you're listening to this podcast today and you have trauma or you have something and you want to get it checked out, join one of these trials. Get aboard on one of these trials because they're all over the United States.
What you got to lose?
Exactly. What do you have to lose? And I'll tell you right now, they're seeing a lot of success. Now, you can't do the MDMA, the psilocybin, or the ayahuasca, but what you can do is ketamine. So let's talk about ketamine for a minute. Ketamine has a street name of cat, right? And it used to be used for an anesthesia in the hospital, right? Ketamine is being used currently to treat depression, okay? So a lot of people who have depression, and I'm just going to give you statistics from where I am in South Carolina, right? There are 2 clinics in Columbia that have ketamine at their clinics for helping people who have anxiety and depression, okay? If you have anxiety and depression, you typically have to take a pill every day, okay, to keep you, at an even keel. If you go into a clinic that is administering ketamine, you can get it 2 ways. You can get it in a tablet form or you can get it in a lozenge form, or you can get it intravenously through the vein. If you do ketamine for depression, after that one treatment, you do not have to take any meds for 6 weeks.
So it keeps you balanced, I guess? What's it balancing?
The mind. The mind. I don't know how else to explain it. But it's not widely used, but it's certainly available. The guy that I told you who's the Russian that I have worked with, he actually has it in his clinic, and he does a lozenge form. And he said it does amazing things for people with anxiety and depression.
You know, this thing has been building for years. Depression, anxiety, stress. And people have been searching for the answers. Maybe we're getting ready to get a hold of the answers.
Well, as long as we have it as a Schedule I drug. So this year, for the first time, the FDA approved it as a breakthrough drug. Now, we're not talking about ketamine, we're talking about MDMA, psilocybin, breakthrough drugs, right? The FDA is posed to quite possibly allow some type of delivery of these drugs for people who are suffering from trauma. Don't know if that's going to happen because we still have drug enforcement. I mean, there's obviously a lot of reasons that people are thinking, whoa, we can't let this thing out there. It'll just take over the minds of all these people. Well, I agree with that. I definitely don't believe that it should be a recreational drug. However, in a therapeutic setting, used when we can identify anxiety, depression, and things of that nature, why wouldn't we use something that works? Why wouldn't we do that, right?
We got to try something because mental health is a big problem.
It is a big problem. But, again, if all the people who needed to go and be seen for mental health were going to be seen for mental health, well, I can tell you this, there's not enough counselors now. And as a matter of fact, Dee, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I said today while we were on this podcast is if you're a veteran and you're sitting at home wondering what you're going to do when you're done with your time, you need to go to school and become a counselor. And I'll tell you why, okay? All the time that I was in school to get this master's degree, 2 years, I absolutely was adamant about not working with veterans. I didn't need to work with veterans. I was not going to work with veterans. And people asked me why. And I said, because there are so many people out there already working with veterans. Well, guess what? 1% or less of them are veterans, right? So if I'm a veteran, and you're coming to me and you're a veteran, and we've already talked about that I got your back thing, right? You're going to be far more inclined to open up to me about your experiences and let me help you as a counselor than you are going to be to the person who is not a veteran.
And you can understand it. The other guy,
right?
How you going to relate?
Right. So, I mean, if someone were paying me money, if someone said, I will bankroll you, I would get in my car and I would go from base to base to base to base to all of these people who are getting out of the military. Remember, we said with 2 days, right? Yeah. Here's your 2-day training, right? And the very first thing that I would talk to them about is reintegration into civilian society. I would talk to two of them about post-traumatic growth, and I would absolutely talk to them about using their post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college and get a degree and become a counselor for veterans, because we don't have any. We don't have any. And I can tell you that when people come to see me in my office and we sit and talk, the average time it takes for a client to truly open up about why they came to counseling is 6 to 8 weeks.
Golly. Before they're able to open up and trust you or whatever.
Exactly. Before they're able to open up and trust you, 6 to 8 weeks, right? Imagine how long that would be if we were using psilocybin or MDMA or ketamine to help our people. I mean, it would be amazing. I mean, we could do some things. But even more than that, if you can identify with me and I and you have something in common, you're more than likely going to be a whole lot more willing to let me help you with your problem.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Hello, I'm Dee Burris, and most of you know me as a general contractor. In October of 2020, I started a podcast that I call The Discussion with Dee Burris. Each week, I have conversations with interesting, informative, and fascinating people from Cleveland and Bradley County and the surrounding areas. You can watch the discussion at dburris.com on YouTube and Facebook, where we would ask you to please subscribe, it's free, for updates and notifications of new shows. It's no problem. On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland, Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call. If you want residential or commercial plumbing, give Rick's Plumbing a call. Call Jason or Josh. They'll do you a good job. I use them. I've used them for years. They're no problem.
Come on. Woo!
You almost can't help somebody if you've not been in some of it.
Right.
I mean, you. In other words, if I'm from Russia, it's going to be hard for me to counsel you in your marriage, because you're not.
Yes, it is, but I will tell you this: I can't absolutely positively agree with that, because we have so many people out there today who are helping veterans who have never served. Right? They are out there working with veterans, and they are making dramatic changes in veterans' lives, right? And they're not veterans themselves. I merely state that to say that you relate much better to someone who knows who you are. It's just like you're Russian to a marriage, right?
Yeah.
Okay? It's like a counselor who's never been married counseling married couples. Right?
Yeah,
it's a little far stretch for those people that are sitting there on the couch to say, how do you relate to me when you've never been married before?
Yeah. Or somebody talk about raising kids that's never raised some. That's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Right. So I mean, but I do believe that there are some really good counselors out there who can do it, who are doing it. But what we need is more counselors who are veterans for veterans. And what we need to legalize, these drugs in a therapeutic way. And I would encourage you to look up Rick Dalton. There's one of his videos out there. He actually talks about they did this same thing we were talking about with the 90-day building the scaffolding and then the treatment. This guy had come back from Afghanistan. I think he did like 4 or 5 tours in Afghanistan. He had attempted suicide on himself at least 4 times.
God.
Okay? He went through this trial. He went through the first session of MDMA, and after the first session of MDMA, he dropped out of the trial. He said, I'm done. I went through this first session, and I realized in this session what a pity party I had for myself. I was all upset because my friends died in Afghanistan, and what I didn't realize that I now realize after doing this MDMA is that they would not want me to do what I'm doing right now, and this is wrong. He now works in Cambodia working with kids who have lost their legs to mines.
Didn't that guy, wasn't he in the foxhole or something, and his platoon had to come back and rescue him? Or is that the guy?
I don't know about that. I don't know what that one is. I don't know. I don't think so. This guy was like a special forces guy or something.
I think this guy was too. I remember seeing him on a talk show or two.
Yeah.
But isn't it something that we're sitting here talking about the possibilities of using something to solve a problem that they didn't used to acknowledge existed with a thing that was supposed to be taboo in the past.
Yes.
I mean, us humans, we must be stupid.
Well, you know what? We're not stupid. Think about how young we are in the world, okay? Think about how long man has been around, and we have been studying the science of the brain and the mind, right? Remember again the saying I said, compared to what we ought to be, we're only halfway there. Okay, the mind is so vast. There's so many things we don't know, right? And so as we continue to learn and continue to grow with that mind and figuring out things that work, you know, I mean, we're obviously much more in control of our minds than we think we are. Okay, and that's one of the things that, you know,
that's what you were saying earlier.
A very positive thing for me is understanding that only I can fix me. I can come to you and you can help me with coping skills and things of that nature, but only I can fix me, right? And so how do we do that? We're just got to continue to work. We've got to continue to study and learn, but at the same time, we've got to continue to also have that post-traumatic growth. We're all going to struggle. It comes right back to that. We're all going to struggle, right? How are you going to struggle? Are you going to struggle well, or are you going to struggle badly, right? If you struggle badly, what happens? You never get out. You never reintegrate. You stay in your house. You barricade yourself in there, or whatever it is that you do, you self-medicate, right? And that's your life. And the thing that's so bad about that is if you served in the military for one day, you have earned the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because anybody who signs up to join the military says, here's my life, here's my check, it's got my name written on there, you can take my life if you need to because I'm giving it to you. I mean, that's really it, right? We raise that right hand and we swear to support and defend. And you're saying, up and into my life, I'm giving you. And so when that time is over, it doesn't matter how long it is, right? You stepped across the line and said, I'm giving of myself for this country. And that says to me that if you've done that, what else could be hard after that? What else could be hard after saying, I'll give my life for this country, right? And so you have to make it work. We have to get the word out to people that there are ways to make it work. We have to get the word out to these veterans that there's ways, you know, that they can be brought in and learn post-traumatic growth and struggling well and lean into it, right? It sucks, okay? Lean in.
But they're used to that.
Yes, they are used to that. Lean in, right? And that trauma thing, man, that trauma thing is terrible. Now, one of my other things is, you know, along with being a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist, I definitely want to get more involved in trauma, because I am working trauma right now. And, you know, with our first responders, our police officers, military members, I know first responders and police officers, firefighters, EMTs, 911 call operators. Man.
Yeah, 911 call, that would be you could get the wrong phone call and it could send you into a mental tailspin.
Well, I want you to think about the dopamine that's released when you're getting a call like that. Right? So, I mean, those are highs that you're getting as well from just listening to a phone call coming in, right? Building up.
Somebody screaming,
absolutely.
Bloody murder.
Yep. And then, you know, you get off for the end of the night and you go home, and now you don't want to, you know, now you got a screaming child in your face and you're like,
you're going to go home watch Andy Griffith.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a strange world, isn't it? You know what the biggest nation in the world is? The imagination.
There you go. You're right. You're right.
The biggest nation in the world is the imagination.
And it's in your mind. Your imagination is in your mind. It's not your brain. It's in your mind.
Maybe the military in the beginning taught you that your mind can overcome. And people that get out of the military that have this PTSD, maybe they need to learn to let their mind overcome that too. But what you're saying is there's more PTSD in other areas of the world. Not just, you don't have to have been shooting out of a foxhole in Vietnam in the rain. You could have been up at Charleston in that wreck that they had with the fog.
There you go. You're sitting in your car at the red light and suddenly you are violently slammed from the back by someone who did not hit the brakes. That's PTSD right there. You have a trauma, because guess what? Never will you sit in your car again without looking in that rear view mirror
Never.
or turning around behind you and worrying about somebody hitting you in the back end. As a matter of fact, you might not even be able to get back in the car. 3 weeks ago in Columbia, we had a mall shooting in the mall in Columbia, right there where I live. Imagine how many people will never go back to the mall.
Oh, yeah.
Never go
I
back to the
almost
mall.
won't go now just hearing about it. What do you think about the Ukraine war? All of that from a military standpoint?
Well, I'll tell you this. We have service members from the United States fighting in Ukraine.
As we speak?
As we speak, on their own. They did not go as part of any military action from the U.S. Why do you think they're there? Think about our conversation today. Why do you think
Because
they're there?
they have members there also?
No, they're there because they need the adrenaline. They need
Oh.
the rush, right? Now they can go and they can get it again, right? They're over there fighting because guess what? They are much more at home there than they are here. What do they have here? They have their house and alcohol, or they have their house and a bedroom, or they have their house and they're in a dark...
The banker wanting them to make their payments. Need to go to work tomorrow. Up there they can just... It's all
And they're
the
getting
wind.
paid, and they're probably teaching, Ukrainian forces. What do I think about the war there? I think it's a war against good and evil. I think Vladimir Putin thought he could go in there and easily take over that country, and I think that those people had a resiliency that he was not prepared for. I think that he didn't prepare the Russian people for a fight in Ukraine, and so therefore they're not behind him on the war. I think it's scary for the rest of the world because I think we have to be concerned about how far do we push him before he pushes the red button. When you isolate someone and you trap them and you put them in a corner, that's when they're the most dangerous.
If they can be dangerous, that's when they're dangerous, right?
Yeah.
The Ukrainian people, can you imagine how they're doing? Like me, I just kind of see it on the news.
Right.
But you're probably real familiar with the smells and sounds.
The first 2 weeks of the war, we had more veterans that were talking about Ukraine and more veterans that were triggered by the Ukraine conflict, right? Because this is something that's very personal, right? There's a people that, imagine, you're saying you're watching it on TV, most of the Ukrainian people, there are many people in Ukraine who've never experienced war in their lives, never. And suddenly the next day their country is being bombarded. Even now, today, Russia might not be able to have the gains that they had weeks ago, but they're still pummeling that country. They're still killing people every day. And when you're not used to that, when it's not something that's in your, it's psyche, it's never been something imagine how many of those people are going to need mental health help.
And the uncertainty of their future.
Yeah.
Of their property, their homes. I've got 2 guys that I know that came here from Ukraine, and they're going to meet me next week, and they're displaced from their house, and
Wow.
And it's just horrible.
It is bad. It's really bad. Again, like I said, you'd look at Finland, who just said they're going to join NATO, right? And you've got other countries who are now looking to join NATO. And I think what we do with that is we further isolate Russia. And again, Vladimir Putin is a person in my mind who is not willing to be pushed but so far. And so I think for some people, we don't think about nuclear war, but I think that the prudent person considers all options. Okay, that means you and I sitting here today need to consider all options, right? Vladimir Putin, were he to push the button, would absolutely set off World War III. I don't think that that's something that he will do. But is it something that he could do? Yes. So what does that mean? That means that you, for 1 minute, Dee, today, should take a moment and say, what would a nuclear war look like for me in Cleveland, Tennessee? Okay? And, for most people, I would guarantee you they haven't said that.
No.
Okay? But I have. Because, let me say, as a military person, all options have to be considered when there's a war.
If they called you tomorrow, would you head that way?
If the U.S. military called tomorrow and asked me to go to Ukraine, probably not. Probably not. If the U.S. military mobilized to defend our country because of an aggression, absolutely.
You'd say, let me pee first?
I would absolutely put back on this uniform.
What are those medals for? They give them to you?
So, well, the ones at the top are always personal awards. Okay, so all your personal awards are at the top, and then all of the unit awards are at the bottom. These are rifle badges: the expert rifle, sharpshooter pistol, and this is jump wings. I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane 5 times, right? And Marine Corps, just for most people, we do not have our own jump school. That's an Army school. So early on in my career, someone told me I was going to jump school, and I said, I don't really want to go. And my lieutenant said, I don't really care whether you want to go. You're going anyway. So they sent me to jump school. And the very first time I jumped out of a perfectly good airplane, I saw the ground coming up to meet me, and I pulled my legs up as high as I could and landed on my tail end. And for about the next 4 days, I was black and blue and could hardly walk. But that just taught me a very valuable lesson, right? Leave your legs down so they will connect with the ground before your butt. But yeah, 5 jumps, and so I'm. That's.
Now I remember on Sergeant Carter. Remember when Sergeant Carter, he had 2 up and 1 down, and Gomer had 1 up and 1 down. What does that mean?
So that's just your stripes on your side. These are, each one of them, E1 through E whatever, right?
You got more than Sergeant Carter has.
I have more than Sergeant Carter has, but Sergeant Carter's so used to in the Marine Corps, once you hit the rank of sergeant, even if you got staff sergeant, gunnery sergeant, master sergeant, first sergeant, they just called you sergeant, right? But the Marine Corps has gone away from that, and the Army has kept with that. So there are some pretty big differences between the Army and the Marine Corps in regards to what we want to be called. What I'm wearing is a first sergeant's chevron, so the diamond in the middle signifies what I do in the Marine Corps. This is an administrative position, so basically once I got to a certain point in my career, I had to choose whether I wanted to be on the technical side or the administrative side, and I chose the administrative side because as a senior enlisted person, you get to sit next to the commander, who's an officer, and you're like the senior enlisted, you're like the right-hand man for the commander. He's always going to tell me what to do, but typically he's going to say, hey, I want you to tell the troops this or that, and then I'll go out there and tell the troops this or that. And I'll tell you this, Dee, the best thing for me was I got to wear this uniform for 15 more years after I got out of the Marines. So we didn't really talk about it, and I'll just talk about it very briefly. But in 2006, when I retired from the Marines, mainly the only reason I went to Lexington, South Carolina was I got offered a job as an ROTC instructor. I didn't even know what ROTC was, but Bradley High School has ROTC. It's Army, right? So JROTC, or JROTC, as a lot of people call it, is Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. And basically, if you have an Army program at your school, then they teach you Army rank, Army jobs, Army all that stuff. If you have a Navy program, it's Navy rank, Navy jobs, all of that stuff. There's only one Coast Guard program in the United States at this time, right? So they've kind of consolidated and done away with some junior ROTC, but I took a job in Lexington, South Carolina as a Navy junior ROTC instructor, but as a Marine. So I very quickly turned that Navy unit into a Marine Corps unit, believe it or not. It stayed a Navy unit, but we didn't do a lot of Navy stuff. We did a lot of Marine Corps stuff.
That's what you knew.
That's what I knew. But I learned a lot about the Navy in those 15 years, and I met a lot of really good people from the Navy. And the one thing I can tell you about the Navy is, if those guys are out on a ship, oh man, they are working their butts off 16 hours a day or more. Sometimes, trying to keep the aircraft carrier going or whatever it is that they're doing.
Do you think that all branches of military teach you basically the same thing? It's one for all and all for one?
I think that all branches of the military teach you to support and defend the United States of America. Do I think they have the same mentality? No, I do not. I think the Marine Corps' mentality is rather extreme. I think the mentality that we have is good in a lot of ways and bad in some ways. I think that the Army is the largest force that we have, okay? And I think because they have so many people, it's a little bit harder for them to teach that extremity that the Marine Corps teaches. The Marine Corps only has 2 basic training places in the United States, one at San Diego and one at Parris Island. That's the only two, right? The Army has many. The Air Force is a much more stringent. If, I have two sisters. Obviously, both of them called me when they were younger and said, I'm thinking about going in the military. Where do you think I should go? One of them I sent to the Navy and the other one I sent to the Air Force.
But neither one to the Marines.
Neither one to the Marines. I did not want either one of my sisters to be in the Marines. Now, if I were to do it again today, I don't know that I would be any different, because the thing is each branch has a very specific, and the other branch that we haven't even talked about today is the Space Force. We do have the Space Force.
That's new, right?
It is new, but
due
they
to
are
Trump.
a branch. Do what?
Due to Trump, right?
Right, but we do have a Space Force, and they do have people in the Space Force of the United States of America now. They have their own flag. And as a recommendation for people who like computers, who really enjoy that type of internal dialogue, I think that the Space Force is going to be the way to go, because it is going to patrol the spaces. When I was the junior ROTC instructor and kids would ask me, where should I go? What should I do? I always felt free to break it down. If you want to be treated the best you're ever going to be treated, you need to go in the Air Force. The Air Force treats their people better than anybody else. They have better facilities for their people. They have more money for their people, right? Followed, I wouldn't say closely, but a distant second would be the Navy. The Navy has a lot of people. They teach you a great work ethic, a lot of good jobs in the Navy, okay? Followed next by either the Army or the Marine Corps, okay? The Army, like I said, is the largest force, and so because they're the largest force, I sometimes think they don't have the amount of time that the Marine Corps has to really work on that small unit leadership model, right? And then you have the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps, I would not say is the best for taking care of its people in luxury, okay? But just like anything else, if you were to go today into, Cleveland, Tennessee and say, where are all my Marines? When they play the Marines hymn, every Marine is going to stand at attention, ramrod straight, right? I don't know a lot of other branches that do that. So Marines become Marines and never stop being Marines, even after they retire. I see lots of Marines today, right? One of the things that I do in Lexington, South Carolina, is we do a birthday cake cutting every year on the birthday. 10 November 1775, the Marine Corps was created in a bar, Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? We had a cake cutting on that date. Well, now every year that I'm alive, I'm going to have a cake cutting, and I'm going to invite as many Marines as I know to come to that cake cutting, because it's about celebrating our birth. And last year I had this cake cutting and we had 40 people there, and it was off of the cuff, and I'd had like 4 days to plan it, and bam, I got it together. I could do one here in Cleveland, Tennessee just as easily, and Marines would come out of the woodwork. We're a very brotherhood-related organization, but we don't take care of our own nearly as much as others do. I would say we probably eat our own.
My guess is that's getting ready to change over time.
It probably will. It probably will. What I have seen the military doing as a whole is we are starting to combine, and we don't have any tanks anymore in the Marine Corps. All the Marine Corps tanks went over to the Army. We gave all our tanks to the Army. And as a matter of fact, we told our Marines that, hey, if you want to remain a tanker, that's great, but you're going to have to do it in the Army. So I don't know how many Marines went over to the Army, but we have started to simplify our forces, do away with infantry battalions, make ourselves a lot lighter. So I don't know what the future is going to be. I will tell you this, I'm glad that I have done my time. I combined 23 years in the Marines.
What's your rank? What are you called?
I'm a first sergeant.
First sergeant.
Yep. But I'm not anymore, Dee. I'm David. Yeah, I know. But it's really hard, When I got out of the Marines in 2006, I said, I don't ever want to be called first sergeant again. I want to be called David, right? Well, then I became a junior ROTC instructor. You have to maintain the standards, wear the uniform. You have to do everything that you were doing while you were on active duty, only you're not on active duty. Alone and unafraid out here in the civilian society. I could have walked through Walmart 2 years ago and somebody would have been like, David, hey, David, and I would have never turned around. But if you said, First Sergeant, I'd immediately turn around and look at them, because that's what I learned. Now, in my 15 years at White Knoll High School, 47 of my students are Marines.
Well, that's a lot, isn't it?
47. Yeah. Now, some of the other branches, certainly. I mean, I've never been afraid to tell somebody to go where you think you should best go. But I still have a good amount that are in the Marines today. Yeah.
What's that stoic look when a person has their hat on and they're just looking straight ahead? And what's that saying?
Well, so first off, a Marine will never take a picture and smile. Marines don't smile in pictures, right? It's that stern look, right?
What's that look mean?
We mean business. We mean business. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Give me your most stern Marine look.
My most stern Marine look would more than likely be without
Catch this,
these glasses.
Glenn. You mean business.
You want me to yell across the table again? Yeah.
David, I love you, man.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Dee. Thank you so much, brother.